You know, nothing in this world works the way that you think it does. Nothing. What you think of the way that the world works is so far beyond most people's comprehension. 99% of them's comprehension. You know, schools don't do what you think they do. Police department doesn't do what you think it does. What purpose it's there is not at all what you think it is for. Schools, college, TV shows, movies, news, advertisements, popular figures. None of it at all is what you think it is. None of it. You know, there's something called the Hegelian dialectic. And it has fooled just about everybody. It has fooled me. It is the Hegelian dialectic is basically the trickery, for lack of a better word, of trying to convince people to think that one side is against the other, but in reality they all work together. All of them. You see, the corruption is so beyond anybody's comprehension. To think that you're going to have a savior, i.e. a political figure, who somehow slipped between the cracks of cheesecloth of a corruption, so beyond anybody's comprehension. I understand how beyond, because it's cosmic. I'm just going to leave it at that. People don't understand that these political people are not going to do shit for you. They're not going to change anything. And I know I'm going to have some people saying, well, that's not necessarily true, you know, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care, you know. I really don't care what people have to say about politicians anymore. I know what they are for what they are, and it's beyond people. It's beyond what people are ready to understand. You know, I used to think that the world, that you work hard, you get yourself a good paying job, you get a job and you work hard, and you move up the ladder, you become executive, and then you become CEO. You know, that's what everybody's taught. You work hard, you'll do well, and that's bullshit. I'm just going to give you an example of how the world doesn't work the way that you think it does. Whenever you hear about, you know, first of all, if you ever want to get to a point where you become an executive or a CEO of some kind of major business, a big business, a multi-million, multi-billion dollar business, you don't just get to walk in there and submit your application with the proper amount of work experience and experience in that specific job you're doing and think you're going to be a candidate. It just doesn't work that way. It's more complex than that. It's way, way more complex than that. Because when you're dealing with factions like corporations that are so powerful and have so much power over how things in this world operate, you can't just have some yahoo off the street come in there and think that they're going to run things, because they don't know how the game is played. They don't know how things work at that level. So when you see people that get those big CEO, executive, making $1 million salaries and above, those people are chosen to be in that position because they know how the game works and they're in on the club. Those people are chosen, just like the politicians and the people that become president are chosen. They're elected to be in those positions because they are chosen by people that we don't know about. And quite honestly, I really wouldn't like to meet them. You see, these are all things that people don't understand when we're talking about the occult, when we're talking about how the world really works. I don't like to talk about these things because I know what kind of response I get from most people. Not all people, but most people. Some people are interested. But even then, people are not ready to comprehend how far the rabbit hole really goes in all this. So I have to be careful exactly how I approach these things to my viewers. But these people are elected. They are selected. You see, it's funny because you can't select your president. You can only elect your president. You don't get to choose who gets to be in office. They come up and they say, okay, this is the person and that's the person. Those are your two choices. That's it. You don't get to choose. You get two choices and that's it. So you don't get to pick anything. So which means you're not in control of the process. You see, these are things that people just are not ready to comprehend because people, since the age of birth, we have been born, I sound like Morpheus, we have been born in this world. But it's true. We live in a world of delusional chaos. And we live in a matrix. That's what all this is. That's why I keep bringing this up. That's why the theme of my channel is the matrix. Because we live in a matrix. Whatever you want to call that to be, whether it be the fact that we are bombarded with propaganda, or whether we live in a technological matrix, or whether we're fucking living out in space somewhere and all this is all fake. However you want to describe it, we're living in something that is artificial. Because the world around us is artificial. Everything around us is artificial. The food we eat is artificial. The clothes we wear are artificial. The communication that we have is artificial. We talk through cell phones. We use apps. We use text messaging. It's an artificial way to communicate. When you begin to open your eyes to the bigger picture, you begin to see that things are not exactly as you thought they were. And some people are lucky enough to be able to connect the dots, but when you connect the dots, you can never go back. You see, when you start learning about these things, when you start learning about how the world really works, learning about this matrix that we live in, you can never go back. That's why, we use that terminology, taking the red pill. Because you can't go back. Because it changes you. Because your mind changes. How you view the world changes. Everything that you thought you knew is not at all what you thought it was. Again, I say we live in an artificial environment. In every sense of the word. Fake clothes, fake food, fake ways of talking with people, with using, trendy languages and catchphrases that give you social brownie points that has been given to you by the very same people that own Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Google and YouTube and the news and alternative news. Given to you by the very same people that run those factions. People spray chemicals on their lawn that are artificial and fake and toxic to make their grass look greener. Making the grass artificially grow a certain way. We put artificially infused gasoline in our cars. We wear artificially created, some people put on artificially created scents like cologne. Artificial toothpaste with chemicals in it. Explain these things. Why is it that all this crap is in here? And I'm here to tell you it's much bigger of a reason besides trying to get people to become sick. That's only part of it. When we're looking at this matrix. So I'm here to say we don't live in the world that you think we live in. Nothing at all is what it seems to be. There's a spiritual aspect to all of this. If you don't think so, I suggest you check again. Because if you think that there isn't some kind of other force controlling things on this planet, I mean, it's common sense. The world is not just cut and paste and put. It's not that simple. Nothing is as simple as it seems. It's much more complex. Everything is much more complex. You don't just throw bricks together and make a house. You don't just put two chips together and have a computer. And you don't just have an earth with 100 million people on it, with corrupt people that are into Satanism, pedophilia, human sacrificing, and a whole bunch of other things that don't even begin to scratch the surface, which it won't even be scratched, on how deep this thing goes. There is another element to all of this. And it is of spiritual nature. And I don't mean spiritual in the good sense either. Spiritual meaning not of this world, not of this dimension. It's much more complex than that.